Welcome into the Contrarian Leader. I'm Brian Plowman. I'm glad that you're here. In a world full of leadership noise and shiny new fads, this is the place where we cut through it all and reach for the evidence that actually moves the needle for you and for your organization. I'm your friendly horsefly, here to keep us sharp and challenge the assumptions that no longer serve us. And today we're talking about young talent. So let's dig in. If you've been paying attention to the conversation around the next generation entering the workforce, you've probably heard the usual narratives. Gen Z is entitled, they want too much flexibility, they lack resilience, or they're just different for the sake of being different. Well, I'm going to challenge that framing today because the research, and by research I mean large-scale multi-country studies and scholarly work, paints a much clearer and more useful picture. Young talent isn't asking for the moon. They're asking for the conditions that allow them to perform, develop, and stay engaged over the long term. And most organizations are still structured in ways that systematically withhold those conditions. Today, we're going to look at what the data actually says about Gen Z and early career talent, what they need from the organization and from their direct leaders if we want them to thrive and succeed beyond the first couple of years. So let's go. The bulk of the evidence comes from sources like Deloitte's annual Global Gen Z and Millennial surveys. This covers tens of thousands of respondents across more than 40 countries, but it also taps into things like Gallup's workplace data and academic reviews and empirical studies published in the last several years. A consistent pattern emerges. These younger workers prioritize stability, skills development, and well-being over the traditional fast-track to leadership model that many organizations still assume is the primary motivator. Only about 6% list reaching a leadership position as their primary career goal. Most prefer gradual growth, including lateral moves that build real capability, rather than rapid promotions that come at the expense of sustainability. Purpose ranks extremely high. Roughly 90% or more say a sense of purpose is important for their job satisfaction and well-being. A significant portion have already left roles or rejected opportunities because of misalignment with values or a lack of meaningful contribution. Learning and development is consistently among the top reasons why they choose and stay with an employer. They want continuous practical skill building. And today, that includes support for AI tools, paired with soft skills like communication and critical thinking. Many are actively developing skills weekly, often on their own time. Flexibility, manageable workloads, and genuine support for mental well-being are a non-negotiable for a large share of this population. Financial pressures are real. Well, for all of us, but for many of them as well, which is why competitive pay and stability matter, but they're not sufficient on their own. So what does this mean at the organizational level? First, purpose and values can't be posters on the wall. They have to show up in decisions, in how work is designed, and in what gets rewarded. When roughly 40% have walked away from opportunities over ethical or purpose misalignment, the cost of performative culture becomes very measurable. Second, development pathways need to be real and flexible. Not everyone wants the same vertical climb on the same timeline. Organizations that treat career progression as only rapid promotion miss the preference for durable skill building and lateral growth that supports long-term contribution. Third, the systems around flexibility, workload, and well-being have to be intentional. Gallup data in particular shows higher rates of non-engagement among younger workers when they lack strong connections and development opportunities. Deloitte data links positive well-being strongly to the presence of purpose and support. Finally, technology and tools do matter. As digital natives, they expect modern systems that enable productivity rather than create fiction. The research also shows that they are adopting AI faster than their organizations are ready to support them. Now, the contrarian point here is straightforward. many organizations still design the employee experience around the assumptions of previous generations or around short-term operational control. The data says that approach is increasingly mismatched with the talent that they need to retain and develop. Now, the more critical layer, the direct manager or leader. Gallup has long shown that the relationship with one's immediate supervisor is one of the strongest predictors of engagement. For younger talent entering with less prior work experience than previous cohorts, this relationship becomes even more decisive. The research highlights several consistent needs. They want empathy and a positive, authentic stance. One Deloitte digital study found Gen Z ranking empathy as the second most important trait in a boss, while managers ranked it much lower. They noticed the gap. They want clear expectations, frequent constructive feedback, and coaching, not just task assignment. Academic work, including Holly Schroeth's analysis in California Management Review, shows that they value positive attitude, clear targets, open communication, and managers who motivate and value their ideas. They need support with workload and boundaries. Less than half in some surveys report that their boss helps them maintain a healthy workload. Many attribute stress directly to that relationship. And they respond to developmental leadership, managers who invest time in mentoring, create opportunities for exposure and growth, and foster a sense of autonomy and relatedness. Reviews of the literature point to the importance of perceived supervisory support and higher quality leader-member relationships for engagement and retention. Transformational, authentic, and servant-oriented leadership styles show up repeatedly as more effective than purely transactional or hierarchical approaches with this cohort. Now, here's where the research becomes uncomfortable for many organizations. When these needs go unmet, the result is higher non-engagement, quieter forms of withdrawal, and elevated turnover risk. Younger workers are often more willing to leave for better alignment. The systems that over-index on control, compliance, and short-term metrics, the same systems that favor management over leadership, as we've discussed in previous episodes, make it harder to deliver what this talent actually requires. So the opportunity is equally clear. Leaders who treat the relationship as developmental rather than purely directive, who create psychological safety and clarity, and who advocate for the organizational conditions of purpose, growth, and sustainability are the ones more likely to unlock long-term contribution. This is not about lowering standards, it's about aligning the environment with the conditions that produce sustained performance and capability. So the research does not support the caricature of an entitled generation. It supports a generation that is pragmatic about their well-being, intentional about development, and clear-eyed about purpose, shaped by economic uncertainty, technological acceleration, and a different relationship to traditional career ladders. Organizations and leaders who continue to default to the old playbook will keep experiencing friction. Those who examine the data and adjust, starting with how direct leaders show up every day, will be better positioned for the talent they need. The question worth sitting with is this: in your organization or on your team, are the systems and relationships designed around what the research says younger talent needs to thrive, or around what feels familiar and comfortable? I'd be interested to hear where you're seeing the gap or the progress in the comments below. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me. In a world full of leadership noise, keep reaching for the evidence that moves the needle. Stay sharp, keep challenging those outdated assumptions, and go make something better. This is the Contrarian Leader. I'm pulling for you. See you next time.